So there's nothing better to talk about than your own lived experience. So how did you get started? Why did you get started? Why are you passionate about whatever you're passionate about? So like answer some fundamental questions about yourself. And that's the place to start with post, because then you don't feel like someone's going to come argue with you about your opinion or anything. You're talking about yourself, your own lived experience. One of the easiest ways to do this is to think about where you started in your career and what would you have wanted to know. So, 3 things I would want to know, or how to get into the business, or why this is important. And start with your own lived experience. That's my go-to starting spot.
Hello and welcome to Growing Through It, your go-to podcast for real leadership stories. I'm your host, Jen Arnold. In every episode, you'll hear straight talk from leaders who face their own challenges. We'll dive into those whoops moments and the insights that followed. This podcast is about the lessons that refine us, shared to help you confidently lead in your own style. Whether you're looking to steer your team towards success or just seeking a spark of inspiration, you're in the right place. Let's grow through it together. Jessica, welcome to the Growing Through It podcast. I'm so glad to have you on today.
I am so excited to talk to you. We have so much to chat about.
We do. I could have used your advice back in the day. So hopefully all the leaders that are listening can learn. Now, before we dive in, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I am Jessica D. Winder. I own Hidden Gem Career Coaching, and I have recently released a book. And I say recently, it's been a year, but it feels like yesterday. So the book is called The Hidden Gem Within. It is a career coaching journal that has, journal prompts, but also some of my lived experience in it. And my background is HR. I've been doing this for almost 13 years. And my most recent role was in SVP of People.
And I have to tell this story because I find it so endearing about you, Jessica, that we met at the Transform HR conference, and we were in this Culture First event, and I introduced myself as the lead at Las Vegas. Jessica came over and said, "Hey, nice to meet you. Yeah, we'll connect later." And so after we did connect later, actually before we connected later, I looked you up. Such a humble person. She didn't mention her book. She didn't mention her cajillion followers on LinkedIn, which comes with its own baggage that we'll talk about today. But I love that about you, that you were just a humble person who does a lot of things, but it doesn't make it your identity. So
No, not at all. In fact, I ran up to you because I was like, oh my God, somebody else that lives in Vegas and works in HR. So I was trying to make a friend. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. Like, hi, my name's Jessica. Let's be friends. That's where I was going.
Hey, it worked. I loved it. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Now, creating a brand makes sense. So from my perspective, I work for myself, have been for the past 8 years, but I want to talk about from the leader lens, a leader that works in organizations. I remember back in the day when I was in corporate, and this was, 8 to 9 years ago. So LinkedIn wasn't quite as popular, but I remember our communications team coming to us as leaders saying, "Hey, here's some stuff you can post on LinkedIn." And we're all like, "Why do we need to do that?" It didn't make sense to us at the time, but obviously things have changed. So why is it important for leaders to have a personal brand?
Yeah. So what I tell my leaders all the time is no matter what, you have a brand. It's what people are saying about you when you're not in the room. Whether you post or not, you have a brand. Specifically, sometimes it's just with your team or within the organization. And so why not utilize that? So what that marketing team is normally trying to do is say, like, people will more likely engage with content that is from an individual than from a company page. So there's a lot of research on that. Like, you can do all the company pages and all that you want to. Most people won't engage with it. But if you have that same company, have the CEO or someone on the leadership team, or honestly, anyone that works in the company talk about their experience, it's more likely to get engagement. So 3 years ago, when I started writing on LinkedIn, it was honestly a form of just self-expression. And then people would engage with it. And I'm like, oh, people agree with me or disagree with me, depending on the topic. And so that's how it started for me. And I would just write once or twice a week. And now it morphs into I write every day. But the whole point of the personal brand is what do you have to say about the company? So there's things to be said about like your experience working in the company, but also to build your brand outside of that, because no matter where you work, you are more than your job. So what do you have to say to make you quote unquote a thought leader in whatever it is that you're doing that you can continue to take with you no matter what? So when I'm coaching people, I always tell them, build your personal brand because it's yours. You take it with you wherever you go. No matter what happens, it is yours. And businesses now realize that. And that is why they want to give you copy to say, like, post this, which I have to say, when they do that, don't post because it looks
don't post what they actually give you.
Yeah, like, don't post what they actually, like, use it as a template to write it in your own words. But when you do that, people see through it all the time. And they're like, everyone from this company is posting the same thing on this one day. You're not going to get the response you think you are.
Right. No. I don't even remember what it was or if I even posted it, but is in your experience, do companies try to tell you what to say as opposed to you're free? Like when you said that you post on LinkedIn just to express yourself, in your experience, do organizations, are they okay with that? Or do they want you to stick to the brand?
It depends. So I have worked somewhere before where I had 100% creative freedom. They were like, listen, it's your page. You write whatever you want. Just so happened, this was also a great place to work. So I talked about working there. I talked about being on the leadership team. This was also a place when we did layoffs, I talked about it freely on the platform, and we got a lot of positive feedback because I talked about how we went about this and why we had to do this, and was just very open. And people are used to HR being very secretive. So that's a lot of the why people, I feel like, sometimes are drawn to me, because I am so honest and I say things that, like, oh, maybe you should like, don't say that, HR isn't supposed to say that. But flip side of that is I absolutely have had a CEO before basically tell me he wanted to use my content. So like, hey, we want you to post, but we only want you to post these certain things. And I was not willing to do that. So I left. But it was absolutely a part of the conversation that, like, hey, and at the time, I think I had like 40,000 followers. And he's like, we would love to use your brand and all these things. And like, here's some things that we want you to talk about. And I was like, absolutely not. And my stance is that, I at this point, and at that point too, I was getting paid for sponsored posts. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if you want a sponsored post, you can pay me separately. I'll expense you and you can pay me and I'll write these things. But if you just think just because I work here, you have the authority to tell me what to do with my LinkedIn, that's not true.
Ooh, that must have been an interesting conversation. Yes.
Aren't they always?
Yes, they are. Well, let's think about it in the way of benefit. We'll talk about benefits to the organization. Yeah. One thing you just said was it helps people kind of, I think, humanize the brand, especially if you're talking about layoffs, which no one talks about, right? Yes. It's usually this legal, you can't say anything except for this exact statement. But what other benefits can an organization, like if an organization is listening and they're going, we probably should get on this social media thing or branding thing, why would they?
One of the biggest things, especially if you have some type of product, is your employees are your first customers. So a lot of times people forget that. Like, they are the people that are truly talking about your brand from a place of authority. So why not utilize them? No matter, I don't care if you have 5 employees. Those are 5 people that should know the ins and out of what you're doing. They know the product. They know the why. So they should understand the mission and the vision. So why wouldn't they be vocal? You want your customers to go do reviews. It's kind of the same thing. It's a living, breathing, like they're telling you what's going on, what has changed. And honestly, I also think you have to be strong enough to also take the good and the bad feedback. So one of the things that I have written before is social media policies around, employees. We don't believe, at this company that I was with, we said we don't believe in censorship. So if you've had an experience, you want to write about it, you're free to do so. You are free to do so. We will see it, and we will, maybe we have questions, or if you're talking about something, we might want to understand why or your experience, but you are free to do so. A lot of companies, that scares them. If you're listening right now and that scared you, I get it. I totally get why you would be afraid. My stance, though, is you want to treat people like they can be honest, because they're going to do it anyway. They're going to go do it anonymously on Glassdoor. There are a lot of anonymous platforms now where they could go do the same thing. So why not give them creative freedom? And these things can help you, because if you're also using this information to make changes within, it's a feedback circle. So why not? Why not?
Yes, I would think that it would help too, just attracting people to that company
Yes.
because I
Yes.
mean, yes, there's layoffs and there's layoffs a lot of places nowadays, but at least if you treat them humanly,
Yeah.
you treat them like humans and they're upfront with it. I mean, that's commendable in this day and
Absolutely.
age. It feels like
Yeah.
you're going to be left behind if you don't have
Yes.
something out there.
And employer branding is a big part of it. So one of the things at this particular organization, we would ask people when they would interview, like, how did you find out about us? Or, all that stuff. And I can't tell you how many people said, oh, I found you through Jessica's content because I was writing about the organization and I would tag them. And so it was absolutely something we use for recruitment.
Yes. Well, let me get back to the social media policy just before I dive off that. So you had one, you created one that was pretty much whatever, like
Yeah.
kind of open it for you. But I'm guessing that other people have policies that say, here's what you can and can't post. I
Yes.
mean, how
Yes.
detailed does it get?
Yeah, I've definitely been in an organization before where it was very structured around like if you tag the company.
Mm.
So if you tag the company, we would prefer if you did not say these things or give out, advice or things like that. Now, if you weren't tagging the company and it was just a post for you, there was no outline. Now with the company that I'm talking about, we had no outline at all. It was basically, you're an adult, tell us about your experience. And if you want to write about that on social media, we encourage you to do so. I will say though, that the CEO of this company was a marketing company. So if you have to think about, we had copywriters, we had designers, like the people that were in this creative space, they were already posting on LinkedIn. And our CEO at the time, I think had 200,000 followers on LinkedIn. So he was already a top voice. So it was baked into the culture, but I can absolutely see how people that are not used to writing or they're not into social media, this would be more difficult, but this was a marketing agency. So I want to say that like they were already copywriters,
The content was already pretty good, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't embarrassing. Okay. No, that's a good disclaimer. Well, thinking about it too from a leadership lens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some people feel like they're in organizations, they've got their leadership role and I'm good, right? I don't need to be out on LinkedIn or doing anything social. But one thing you said earlier was you can bring it with you.
Yes.
So why, if a leader's listening and they're like, no, I'm pretty happy in my job, I'm not intending to go anywhere, and they maybe say, oh, why should I waste the time doing this?
Yeah. I see it as like the one point that we just made about recruiting. So if at any time you're going to be adding to your team, this would be great because people then feel like they understand you. They know what your expectations are. It's a great sales point to get people on the team. Second thing I would say is even if you plan to stay where you are, don't you want to be known as a thought leader? And you can niche out whatever you want, whether that's sales, that's marketing, that's operations, whatever it is about you. Don't you want to help move the conversation forward? So that's what I see it as. Like I'm helping to push us forward, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, you know how I feel. Mm-hmm. And so kind of putting that out there and then the ability to, if one day you ever leave, you take these things with you. So no matter where I have worked now for the last 5 years, I have my own brand and my brand is and if you hire me, you know what you're getting. I have actually made that a part of my conversations when I'm interviewing with CEOs at this point to say, have you looked at my LinkedIn? If not, please go do that. And I would love to have a conversation with you about like, what are some things that I've said that maybe you disagree with? And like, let's have a conversation about it. And I see it as a way for people to truly know me. So you know what you're going to get. You know that I'm a hard worker, but you also know that I have very strong opinions. And it kind of sets you up for success, I believe.
Has it turned anybody off?
Oh, absolutely. There is no doubt about that. I am not everybody's cup of tea. If you want traditional compliance, risk management focused HR, I am not your girl. And you're going to see that very strongly in my content.
Well, it's good, right? I mean, at least you know where you stand, right? There's no questions of what they're getting. And I love that you just put it out there. But like, go read it because you need to know who I am. And an interview doesn't ever really tease that out, right? You're not going to give your strongest views in an interview.
Yeah.
So I do like that. Now, you made an excellent point about recruiting because there are probably a lot of high performers out there on LinkedIn. So you could actually get people to your team. Yes. If you're out there as a leader and you're looking for someone. For some reason, that never even occurred to me. I think that's...
Yeah, like the recruiting part of it is major. I have had probably 3 or 4 of the last people that I've hired to join my HR team were all people that engaged with my content and sent me a private note and said, hey, if and when you have an opening, I want to work for you. And this was people that have never met me, just based off of my LinkedIn content. So absolutely, it is used for recruitment.
Love that. Now, I know we're talking social media as a way of branding. Is that the main way you recommend someone get started? I mean, there's a million ways to brand, but I don't want to exclude anything else from the conversation.
No, I think social media is definitely one of the ways. There's also, having your own blog or your own website. I've seen people that don't do any engagement on LinkedIn, but like have a blog and like instead of like posting daily like I would do, I have a monthly blog, but they just have a blog once a week or once a month or quarterly and just get all of their ideas out. So there's a way to do creative expression that way. Another thing is like podcasts, obviously like this, like people, just talk it out if you don't want to write it out. Another thing I want to point out about social media is you don't have to always post. I started out just commenting on other people's posts and saying what I agree or what I don't agree with. So that is the place I recommend people start is you never know how many followers you can get or engagement when you are just commenting. You don't have to have your own post to start if that's intimidating. I know some people are like, I don't want to do that. Just go comment then. Yeah. Go say what you think about other people's posts.
Yeah, I like that advice. It's one that, it takes some time, right? You have to dedicate some time to go in and find something you want to post about. And yeah, so I think that's great advice, especially if you feel a little bit vulnerable putting yourself out there for the first time, because we all know there's some trolls out there. Not as many on LinkedIn as like Instagram and all that.
Oh, they're there. They are there, and they love me.
Talk about it, because we're going to get into pitfalls. All right. Yeah. So, can you talk about the subreddit thread? Like, because I think something to realize is like, people may look at you and all the followers you have LinkedIn and go, oh my God, she's got it so good. Like, everyone's listening, but everyone knows once you get to a certain level, there's going to be haters out there. It's just, but talk about that and what you have experienced from that angle too, because it's not all good.
No, it is not all good. And I'll give you two examples. So, the most recent example is I wrote like HR is not your friend, which mind blowing. Nobody's ever said that before. But anyway, I wrote a post about that and said like, hey, other departments are not expected to be your friend. And my thought behind the entire post was treat HR like a serious business unit that it is, just like every other department. We don't have to all be friends. We can be respectful. We can be a team and be coworkers. So that was the thought process behind it. I made this post. It went viral. Someone screenshotted it and put it on a subreddit called LinkedIn Ludicrous or something of that nature. You can Google it. But anyway, they screenshotted it, put it up there and said like, who does this HR person think that she is? At this point, the last time I checked, which was a couple of weeks ago, I think they had like 300 comments on there. So people were really upset that I said this. And, there were a lot of unkind comments, like really tearing me down. And so it didn't deter me. I still believe what I said. The second example I'll give you is that this was probably 2 years ago. I made a post about my political beliefs, which I feel very strongly about. And someone went on my website and made like an anonymous, like made up an email address and all of this, and called me probably everything but a child of God. They were very, very upset with me that I would post my personal beliefs on my personal LinkedIn page. And so those are the two instances that I will say that it is not all rosy. Like you're going to have people that disagree with you. And I am of the mind frame that if I say something and you don't like, and you come on my page and you have a respectful response of disagreement, I will always have a conversation with you. Right. But when it gets disrespectful is when I absolutely block people, because sometimes people go after your character. Like for me, I'm a Black woman. The thing that people go after is the color of my skin or that I'm a woman. Like those are the two things that people go after when they get upset with me, which makes no sense. We can
2024 people.
Yeah, like we can absolutely disagree and move forward. But I say that to say that if you decide to build a personal brand, these things will happen to you. It just will. Like they will find something that they don't like about you. And so you just have to be ready for it. And saying, I have thick skin, that would be an easy thing to say, but I can't say that these things did not hurt me, because they did. So I'll be really honest and say, have I cried about things that have been said to me? Yes, I absolutely have. Will it stop me? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I love that about you. I mean, you're human, so of
Yeah.
course things are going to hurt you because you're not doing anything. You're just speaking your mind, right? And I
Yeah.
do love when I actually encourage people to disagree
Yeah.
with me as long as it's respectful. Because
Yeah.
because one thing I do feel like sometimes LinkedIn is an echo chamber.
Yes, it
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's it. And you're like, oh, good Lord, can we just have some conversation
And
here?
I
Let's
like
have
people. Yeah, I have absolutely had people disagree with me in the comments and they've changed my mind. I actually wrote a post. I wrote a post and the very next day wrote a post and said, hey, these are the things that were said. And now I'm thinking about this differently. And I had a conversation with the person who made that comment. I was like, hey, do you want to hop on a Zoom? Let's talk for 30 minutes because she had a very different experience than me. So I'm always open to that level of disagreement, but the disrespect will come. It absolutely will come.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember starting out on LinkedIn and there was this one person who would always go comment on things. And it was just, I don't know what he had to do, but he would almost like anyone would post in the space and he would just kind of, it was always a negative comment.
Yes.
So I think that actually stopped me for a while because it's almost like I was like waiting for it to happen.
Yes.
And then finally I was like, this is one man's voice in my head that is stopping me and
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah.
And sometimes you put something out there, nobody cares. Like it's
Yeah.
just, no one's paying as much attention as you think they are until maybe you say something that really
Yeah.
pisses them off.
Until you say you're not their friend.
Yes, HR is not your friend. That'll piss them off. Well, what are some pitfalls? Like you said, when someone's going, okay, you know there's going to be trolls out there, but
Mhm.
for most people, I'd say for the most part, especially when your follower count's lower,
Yeah.
people aren't going to really.
No.
I'd assume. I'm saying that. I have the only experience I've had is that guy that I was telling you about, but he's since
Yeah.
kind of moved on. So there's really no one out there heckling me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
hopefully we haven't scared people off. But what are some pitfalls if people are looking to start and you just want to keep that in mind as they're
Yeah.
starting?
I think the biggest thing that when I talk to people that want to get started is just the feeling of overwhelm of like, what do I say? What do I write about?
Mhm.
And I get asked all the time, like where I get my content from. And it's from everything. Literally, you and I had coffee. I took out my phone. We said something. I took out my phone and wrote a note. And that was a post. So a post can be anything. I listen to podcasts all the time. I read books. You have conversations with people. Starting a doc, before I ever started actually writing on LinkedIn, I just had a Word doc and I still have this Word doc where I just like brain dump everything that I think. Like somebody says something, I'm like, oh, I don't agree with that. Like, or I do agree with that. And just have a document where you have content written down because the main pitfall is people start out strong and then they're like, I don't have anything else to say and they just quit. So it's much better to just post once a week and keep it going than post every day for, 15 days. And then you are like, I don't have anything else to say. So that's the feeling of overwhelm that a lot of people get of like, how do I keep going? And the way to keep going is you have to keep learning and then just keep writing down anything that sparks a thought, anything, write it down because all I need probably is a word or like 2 words and I can make a post out of it.
Yeah, that is good. That is very talented of you, and I think it is. I think for me, it's always been getting the ideas ahead of time or writing them
Yes.
down. I've got a few thoughts, but I'm not as good as you as going, oh yeah, I have this thought. I have like a million different notes everywhere.
Yeah.
Another place I see people tripped up and I'm wondering if you could guide people is, at least for me, I overthink things like, oh, would an image be better? Oh, maybe I should do video or maybe I should do a live. And we get like all crazy in our heads about, what is the right thing. So we do nothing.
Yes. Okay. So funny story. My husband's going to love this. So my husband just started his own law firm. I am unofficially his social media manager. And so the other day I was like writing content for him and trying to make it sound like his voice because his voice is very different than mine. And we spent 30 minutes talking about a word to the point where I was like, I give up. I don't care. I don't care what you write. Leave me alone, but it's so funny because I am much more like write it down, post it, flip it, like whatever. If nobody likes it, it's fine. Whereas he was like, well, this one word, I don't know. And he like literally went and looked it up and was like, well, we could use this other word. And I was like, are we really talking about one word? So I absolutely get what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And I think for him, his point is that he just recently started posting. So he's on this journey now, where he just now started making LinkedIn posts and Instagram posts and all these things for his business. And so it's also very much he's in the legal space. So he very much is like, these words matter and I don't want to say anything wrong. So it does feel overwhelming. And I recognize that. And one thing that I used to do, I can't tell you how many times I have made a post with things that have been misspelled. And it's because I'm like, da, 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 on my phone. And then I just post it. And then people are like, oh my God, how can we listen to you? You can't even spell. So, make sure you use Grammarly.
But it is true. I was going hiking the other day and I had this thought and I was like, for some reason, maybe it was just like, it felt like I had to post, but I did it on my phone and I was like, I just need to get this out into the world. And I did. Nothing really happened. It was pretty minor, but it is harder, right? To get it out. You put it on your phone. But there's a balance between that.
Yes.
Because if you do, like, it's a barrier. If you're going to sit there and look at every word, it's going to be like, nobody has time for that. Right?
Yeah, it adds to that anxiety feeling. So it's like a buildup of like, oh, is this right? Is it wrong? Do I do a photo? Do I do this? Also, another pitfall is people try to feel like they can game the algorithm. I've had so many people ask me like, well, what's the best time to post? And da da da. And I'm like, I don't know. I just post.
I asked you that. I remember going, I was like, Google. And they were like, this is the best time to post. Yeah. And I asked you, you're like, I don't care. I just post on the post.
It's like I just post whatever.
But do you think that is because you've reached a certain level of followers?
I do. I definitely do. I will say absolutely when I first started, I absolutely was like, I post on this day at this time and blah, 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 blah. And to be honest, when I went back and I would run these quote unquote experiments, I would post in the morning and see how much engagement I got. I'd post in the afternoon and it was so all over the place. And the thing about LinkedIn is they're always upgrading. They're always changing, what's on the feed, what's not on the feed and all that stuff. So it's just impossible to keep up with it. And so my stance is just post when something comes to you.
Right.
Yeah.
It was funny because I posted a podcast episode and then someone else commented on it. They're like, I'm trying to get this out, but LinkedIn isn't showing it to anyone. I was like, it's the LinkedIn gods. They're going to do what they want to do and they don't care.
All the time. No. It always changes.
It's exhausting. I like to try to keep up with it. No. I don't. And that was helpful for me when we were talking. And I was like, I'm just going to post when it's convenient for me. And if I think some of that, it may do well, it may not. So I've tried to run it as an experiment. So I track everything to be like, okay, what went well, what didn't. And I can't say there's a ton to be learned from it because like you said, it's like
all over the place.
It is all over the place. So it is interesting. Mm-hmm. Now, one question, we've talked a lot about LinkedIn, and that's really my platform of choice because that's the work I do, organizational training and consulting. But I know you mentioned Instagram. And so I have chosen to be, I'm on Instagram, but I don't do a damn thing with it, except occasionally post a picture of my kids and like, whatever. But I've said I'm sticking to this one platform. It's going to be where I commit my time. Do you think it's a good idea to commit to one, or do you think, hey, spread the love and do the same thing on all the platforms?
This has been something I have personally gone back and forth with, I can say, for years. Literally. So LinkedIn is absolutely my bread and butter. That's where I post that every day. It's if you were to ask me my favorite social media, it's LinkedIn. Like, I absolutely love it. I have an Instagram. Literally, it's mostly photos of my twins and my husband. I think I might have like 100 followers on there. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not where I think my people are. Like, I just really don't. And I'm definitely not going to TikTok. So I'm like,
you're younger than me. You could probably,
go to TikTok. Like, that's my niece. She gives me all the TikTok, jargon and dances and all that. So I have absolutely gotten advice from people that are like, you need to be doing all the platforms. And I personally just decided no. Like, I just decided, no, LinkedIn is where it's at for me. And that's where I'm going to stay. That's where I get like the majority of my people that I want to be talking to, which are business professionals, especially like other HR people, are on LinkedIn. And I absolutely know people that are doing great on Instagram and have like an HR Instagram account. It's just not my thing. So, the only flip side to this is if, tomorrow LinkedIn like disappears or shuts my, page down, then I have no other way to like, people are be like, where did Jessica go? So that's the only, flip side of that.
Right. They own it. You don't. But it's a little tricky. But it's working, right?
100% it's working.
So before we close out, I want to talk a little bit about your kind of how you got, you talked a little bit about how you got started just a couple of times, and then you started doing it like every day. But what do you think has there been one thing that shot you up into the amount of followers you have, the brand you have today? Or has it just been incremental steps?
I absolutely think it's been incremental. The one thing now is the blog. So I have a monthly blog where I take whatever topic it is and I try to like break it down for people and give them my insight in why I agree or disagree, or, my overall opinion of whatever it is. So whether that's like compensation or negotiations or whatever it is. And I always try to I write how I talk. So it's very much like, I don't want to use all the jargon. Like, we're not circling back. We're not, all that stuff. It's just like talk like a normal person. Yeah. And that really skyrocketed me because I've had people say like, oh, I never knew even like performance management. That was one post that went viral that I was talking about performance management and how it's like a torture chamber. And, like there's a way to do this and be kind. And it really resonated with people. So it's the blog. And then I post, like I said, I post every day. So every day I got something to say. And I think it's very top of mind for people that I'm always posting. In fact, when I was on maternity leave for 4 months, I stopped posting and I was getting emails from people that are like, what's going on, that maybe didn't know I was out on maternity leave. Yeah. Like, where are you?
Life, 2 lives, as a matter of fact.
Well, just had twins. I'll be back.
Be patient. Did you enjoy that break, or were you like, no, I kind of miss it?
I did, but I absolutely was ready to come back. I actually started posting before I went back to work. So I was on maternity leave from work, but I was posting on LinkedIn probably within like 2 months because I was bored.
Yeah.
Like it's, maternity leave is the most busy board you'll ever be. So yeah.
I know. I remember my 3 months and I loved every minute of it. Didn't really care. I had someone in my leadership role like subbing in, but I was ready to get back when it was time to get back. Yeah. It is an interesting time. Yeah. So how would you recommend, if a leader, and think about the internal leader in a company, you said they could just go post once a week, or they could comment on other people's, but what do you think if they are just trying to get started, are there any other guidelines you'd give them?
Yeah, the one thing I would say to get started sometime is telling people about your own journey. So there's nothing better to talk about than your own lived experience. So how did you get started? Why did you get started? Why are you passionate about whatever you're passionate about? So like answer some fundamental questions about yourself. And that's the place to start with post, because then you don't feel like someone's going to come argue with you about your opinion or anything. You're talking about yourself, your own lived experience. One of the easiest ways to do this is to think about where you started in your career and what would you have wanted to know. Mm-hmm. So, 3 things I would want to know, or how to get into the business, or why this is important. And start with your own lived experience. That's my go-to starting spot.
I love that. Yeah, no one can complain about it because you're just saying your experience. I think it takes the pressure off a little bit. Yes. I mean, you may have to get a little vulnerable, right? Yeah. You may have to open up. Maybe something that feels a little bit more personal, but that's what people connect to. Exactly. They don't want the bland corporate crap that's out there. They want to know who you
want more corporate jargon. They want why are you in the spot that you're in? And people love to hear how people got to where they are. So if you're a leader specifically, how did you become a leader? Why did you become a leader? What are some mistakes that you made in the beginning of career? And then how did you overcome those, to get to where you are? So lean in the beginning, all about yourself.
Yes. And something you said earlier, I'm kind of connecting it all with, I like knowing my LinkedIn connections. Because God, you have so many, you can't know them all. But even when people connect, I love when they say, hey, just thanks for the connection. Yeah. Just to create something. I even put it on my about, hey, here's who I am. I'd love to get to know you. No one has sent me a damn message to say, here's who I am. Come on, just tell me about yourself.
It's funny you say that, because I get people that send me messages all the time, and I guess I don't know why, they don't think I will respond to them. And I've had people that send me a message and was like, hey, I just want to say I love your content, and I respond, and they're like, oh, wait. And this happened last week that I was like, hey, you want to jump on LinkedIn? You want to talk? And we got on there and she's like, I don't even know what to say. I didn't think that you would do this. And I'm like, yeah, let's have a conversation. Why not?
Yeah, you're a real person. You're not trying to sell anyone anything. You're just trying to really go for the human connection. It's another experience that you can glean content from, and it just can spark other ideas, right? And you're getting some other perspective. I think it's...
You never know. But yeah, I don't have an assistant or anything. It's just me. So if you send me a message, I will respond.
Oh, yes. I hope people test you on that, right? Is she really going to respond?
Please do. I would love it.
I'm going to say this. I can edit this out if not appropriate, but I couldn't connect with you. I had to follow you.
Yes. So here's the thing on LinkedIn. You can only have 30,000 connections. And so I have maxed out all of my connections. So you have to just follow me.
You can't even connect with Jessica because I tried and I was like, let me just follow her.
This comes up quite a lot. LinkedIn needs to change this. Why can't I have 100,000 connections? They're like, no, you can only have 30,000 connections and then everybody else has to follow you.
That is so interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Has it always been that way?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You think they would maybe notch it up a tad bit?
I don't know what's going on over there, but send me a message anyway.
I know. Yeah, you connected back. I followed you and then you connected. We connected. But yeah, I forgot to... You're a hard woman to get a hold of, but they can still send you a message, huh? Oh, well, Jessica, any other thoughts you have before we close out that leaders can, maybe hopefully we haven't scared them to start posting on LinkedIn specifically. That's kind of what we've talked about, or starting a blog or starting a newsletter, getting their thoughts out there, becoming a thought leader. Any other ideas, suggestions, or thoughts you want to leave them with?
I think the last thing I want to say is that LinkedIn has opened so many doors for me. So there are so many opportunities that have come my way. Right now I'm doing like corporate sponsorship deals, like all of these things that are coming my way are all because people find me on LinkedIn. I literally had a meeting this morning and I always ask people, how did you find me? And he said, oh, I follow your LinkedIn content. So opportunities can open for you based off of your personal brand. And like I said, it's yours. You build it. You say what you want to say, good or bad, indifferent. People are going to like it. They're going to hate it, but it's yours. So I feel a sense of ownership. Like this is mine. Nobody can take it away from me. And so that's what I would leave you with.
All right. Well, Jessica, I will link up your LinkedIn page in the show notes and also your Hidden Gem book. And then hopefully people will subscribe to your newsletter and they can hear from you monthly. And then if they go on, they can hear from you every
day. Perfect. This was amazing. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on Growing Through It. I'm Jen Arnold, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. If today's story sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to our podcast, leave a review, and share it with your fellow leaders. And remember, each episode comes with a nugget of wisdom that we expand on in our newsletter. So if you're eager to put these insights into action, head over to our website at growthsignals.co and sign up for exclusive content that'll give you an edge in your leadership journey. Keep growing, and I'll connect with you again soon in our next episode. Until then, take the lessons learned and lead authentically.